President Donald Trump has promised to usher America into the golden age of prosperity, and his tariff plan is the cornerstone of that vision. But the liberal left and the mainstream media want you to believe that that plan is a disaster waiting to happen. So today on American Advocates, we're going to set the record straight on tariffs. Today, we'll be diving into how President Trump's tariffs are going to bring manufacturers back to our shores, create millions of jobs for hardworking Americans, and finally balance the scales of international trade that have been tipped against us for decades. Plus, we'll dispel liberal-fueled myths, examine the history of tariffs, and show why this is America's path back to greatness. When it comes to understanding the Trump tariff plan and how and why that tariff plan is going to usher America into a new golden age, it's important to start with very specific goods that President Trump was very quick to issue tariffs on. In under 2 months, President Trump moved quickly and with bold action placed tariffs on steel, aluminum, and a wide range of other goods from countries like China, Canada, and Mexico. Going back to the steel and aluminum, he issued 25% tariffs on those, and that's designed to protect American industries that have been gutted by cheap foreign imports. His tariffs on other Chinese goods, which are currently at 10% at the time of recording of this video, but set to be increased to 20% soon, target everything from electronics to machinery. These are industries that America used to dominate. These tariffs make it more expensive for companies to produce overseas and ship back to the United States. Why set up a factory in China or Mexico to sell in the United States when you can just avoid these tariffs by building right here in America? See, these tariffs are about incentivizing companies to reshore. Bring your operation back home to America, avoid the tariffs, and create new jobs for hardworking Americans. And it's already working. Look at the steel industry. After Trump's first-term tariffs, thousands of jobs were created and companies expanded domestic production. And when you encourage these manufacturers to come back to American shores, they will bring with them good-paying, blue-collar jobs for hard-working Americans. We're talking welders, machinists, and truck drivers. Real jobs for real American people. Despite the fact that America is definitely in the age of technology, Silicon Valley tech gigs are not going to cut it when it comes to bringing America into the golden age. Yes, those Silicon Valley tech jobs are definitely important. I'm not saying otherwise. And to some degree, they are the future. But if we're going to rebuild the middle class and truly restore the American dream, we need to bring back good-paying, blue-collar jobs for hard-working Americans. Those are the backbone of our society. In fact, look at states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. During the past 3 election cycles, all of which President Trump has run in, he's continued to do well amongst the voters in these 3 states. Why is that? It's because Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Michigan make up the industrial heartland of America, and these 3 states stand to benefit possibly the most from the reshoring that you can expect to occur due to the Trump tariff plan. But the Trump tariff plans are not simply just about protecting hardworking American jobs. There's a lot more to them. For too long, America has been an importing nation, flooding our markets with foreign goods while our factories shut down and hardworking Americans lose their jobs. President Trump's tariffs are flipping that script. By protecting our industries, we're not just keeping jobs here, we're rebuilding our capacity to produce and export. Back to that topic about how tariffs protect hardworking American jobs, because they do. And it's important to understand that under that umbrella of protection that tariffs provide, our American industries will have room to grow once again. They'll have room to innovate. And most importantly, they'll have room to compete globally. Countries like Germany and Japan built their economies on exports. So why can't America? Trump's plan overall, I believe, is to make Made in the USA the gold standard worldwide. From autos and tech to energy and metals, tariffs are and will continue to level the playing field so American companies can dominate exports in high-value sectors. This is how we shrink our trade deficit, something that's been growing at an alarming rate since the 1970s. And it's how we will bring wealth back to our shores. And on that topic of the trade deficit, America needs to begin balancing the trade and ending the exploitation we have faced worldwide. One of President Trump's most brilliant moves is his push for reciprocal tariffs. What does that mean? What it means is if another country slaps a 25% tariff on our goods, America will immediately hit that country back with the exact same 25% on theirs. Reciprocal tariffs are fair, simple, and quite frankly, they are long overdue. And when it comes to the blatant exploitation that America has faced over the years, it's important to understand that China is not the only offender of this. Our so-called allies in Europe, our so-called best friends to the North, Canada, have been ripping us off for years. They charge us outrageously high tariffs to sell our goods in their markets, all while simultaneously expecting us to keep our markets wide open for their cheap imports. The European Union, for instance, charges us 10% on our cars, but we only charge 2.5% tariffs on theirs. China has been stealing our intellectual property for decades now, and they subsidize their industries to undercut us. But then they have the nerve to cry foul when we fight back. This isn't trade, it's straight up exploitation. But the Trump reciprocal tariff plans is how America is finally, after all these years, going to even the odds. This plan is going to force other countries right back to the negotiating table where they need to be. Look at Canada, for instance. Within days of Donald Trump threatening 25% tariffs, Canada's leaders were scrambling to talk. Why? It's because they know their economy depends on fair access to our markets. Reciprocal tariffs aren't just about punishment. They're about creating a level playing field where American workers and businesses can thrive once again. Rebalancing our trade deficit, protecting hardworking American jobs, and returning our nation back to the exporting nation that it deserves to be all sounds wonderful. So how on earth do the liberals then have a problem with this? Well, the answer unfortunately is simple. It's because it's Donald Trump. They have a problem with anything Donald Trump does. And as a result, they have done what they always do. They have formulated a narrative centered around myths and half-truths to get the American people to believe that tariffs automatically cause inflation. You see, the left and their establishment economists love to scream that tariffs are causing inflation. They want you to believe that somehow protecting American jobs and returning our country back to an exporting nation will bankrupt your family. Here's why this is a myth. First off, tariffs don't even automatically cause higher prices. When manufacturers bring their production back to the United States, it creates more competition right here at home. More competition means lower prices in the long run, not higher. And secondly, even if some prices do go up temporarily, the long-term trade-off is absolutely worth it. One of the ways we can squash down the fear-mongering around these Trump tariff plans is to simply look at President Trump's first term. He implemented many of these tariffs on steel, aluminum, and other Chinese goods then, and it did not cause the inflation death spiral that these so-called economic experts from the liberal left predicted. Why is that? It's because businesses adapted. They found new suppliers, reshored their production, or quite simply ate the costs to stay competitive. The real inflation we've seen came from reckless government spending and money printing. That's the key here. That's the real key here. Money printing always causes inflation. Now, it would be unwise to not expect small price bumps as a result of these tariffs being implemented. In fact, I'd almost guarantee that we will see some small price bumps on some of our goods for a little bit. But look at that as an investment into America's long-term, successful future. Every dollar you spend on American-made goods is a dollar supporting American workers, not foreign corporations. Despite the outrageous rhetoric around tariffs that come from the liberal left, it's also important to realize this. Tariffs aren't some new radical idea. In fact, tariffs, I'd argue, are as American as apple pie. From our founding, tariffs were a cornerstone of our economic policy. Without them, we would not have been able to protect our industries while we were building our nation from the ground up into the economic powerhouse it became. In fact, in 1789, one of the first acts of Congress was called the Tariff Act, and this was signed by none other than President George Washington. This Tariff Act protected our infant industries from the British dumping all of their products into our economy, and it helped us grow as a result. Alexander Hamilton, our first Treasury Secretary, championed tariffs to build American manufacturing. And it worked. By the mid-1800s, we were well on our way to becoming an industrial powerhouse. Fast forward just about 100 years from 1789, and we have what's called the Gilded Age. Presidents like William McKinley used high tariffs to shield American industries from foreign competition. And what was the result? Booming manufacturing, skyrocketing jobs, and a trade surplus. I don't even think I've heard the term trade surplus in my entire life. This was the era when America became the world's leading economy, and tariffs were a huge reason why. Now, here's a liberal myth that they love to lean on when it comes to their severe disdain for the Trump tariffs. They love to cite what's called the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930, and they love to claim that that act alone caused the Great Depression of the United States. As usual, this is just a distortion of reality from them. The Smoot-Hawley Act was passed after the Great Depression had already started, and global trade was already collapsing anyway. Not only that, but international trade was only a small fraction of the United States economy in the 1930s. Exports only accounted for about 5% of the US GDP at the time, so even a significant decline in trade would not have been sufficient enough to cause a depression of the magnitude we experienced then. What caused the Great Depression in the 1930s for America is a topic that is long enough to span across several videos, so we won't spend too much time covering that here at American Advocates, at least not today. But what's important to note is that while the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930 was for sure ill-timed, it was not the cause of the Great Depression. The true cause of the Great Depression, in summary, was bad monetary policy. In fact, tariffs in the decades before the Great Depression had only ever succeeded in protecting American jobs and promoting economic growth. Knowledge is power, and it's important to know these things when we take a look at why President Trump is bringing back this proven strategy. Just like his predecessors in Hamilton, McKinley, and even George Washington, President Donald J. Trump understands that tariffs are about protecting our sovereignty, our workers, and our future. History shows they work when done right, and it is of my belief that President Trump's tariff plan is going to be done correctly. This is about more than economics at the end of the day. This is about taking our country back. It's about showing the globalists and the elites that America is coming first once again. And finally, it's about understanding that President Trump is attempting to deliver on a campaign promise to usher in the golden era of America. Because at the end of the day, he understands that history shows tariffs were one of the cornerstones of what made America great in the first place. But what do you think about tariffs? Comment below.